Hello, everyone. It is I, Chastity White Rose, and I've decided to go a little bit fancy with OBS and do some different scenes and change the way I do my videos on Twitch. And I will be posting this to other platforms as well. So the subject of this video is I am going to be teaching my two favorite openings to play when playing as white in chess. Because I've played a lot of games, but I've never really dedicated a video specifically to teaching the two favorite openings that I use when playing as white. Now, if you're playing as black, I will have to make a separate video for that because playing as black is very different than playing as white. However, there are two main openings I use when playing as white. But first, before I get into that, I want to talk a little bit about the technical details of this video. You may have seen a countdown timer before my camera feed showed up. I implemented a little countdown timer because it's a new plugin I installed and I'm just learning to use it. It's kind of cool. I can have a little countdown timer. And what's cool about the design of that is when I start streaming, if I have a countdown, people will see the countdown timer and they'll know something is coming when the count reaches 0. Psychologically, people will know that, but they won't know what is coming. So they're watching, but they don't know what they're watching for. That's the genius part of it. And so what I've done this time is I actually have 4 different OBS scenes. The first was the intro with the countdown timer scene, and this is the main camera scene. And in the next scene, I will be having the camera plus game scene, where it will be my camera and an analysis board. But rather than talking about it, why not just proceed and show you exactly what I'm talking about? So what you see here is you see me in the bottom right corner of the screen, but you also see I'm on livechess.org. I'm in standard mode of the analysis board. And why am I on the analysis board? Well, that's very simple because the analysis board is perfect as a teaching tool. Because when you're playing a game, you see what's happening, but to actually explain the openings and why these two openings are my favorite, I need to not play with a computer opponent and not play with another human because I need to control both what black and white do, which basically means instead of playing with someone else, I need to play with myself. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you why the livechess.org analysis board is a valuable teaching tool. And all you do to get to this is you go to livechess.org, and if you go to Tools and Analysis Board, it will take you to the analysis board, which is precisely what I'm on right now. And here's what's great. I'm going to show you exactly how it works. So white always starts the game in chess. So first, let's move white's queen's pawn. And notice how on the left side of the screen it says 1d4, queen's pawn opening. d4, known as the queen's pawn opening, is a popular initial move in chess, ranking second only to 1e4 in terms of games played. Now, you can read all of this yourself because you can go to the analysis board yourself. So I'm not going to focus too much on what that says, but it has some very detailed stuff. It even has a link to read more on Wikibook, which is a great site, by the way. So the reason that I started going with the queen's pawn opening rather than the king's pawn opening was precisely because I became obsessed with the queen's gambit. So let me show you the queen's gambit. So what happens when both black and white move their queen's pawn, then it's still the queen's pawn opening. But here's what happens. This is the queen's gambit. The queen moves its bishop's pawn, and it says it's the queen's gambit. It tells you the names of whatever opening you have here. It's one of the oldest openings in chess. Now, let me show you the different possible things that can happen. If you're playing as white and you play the queen's gambit, here's what you want to happen. You want black to take the pawn you're offering. Black thinks, oh, I'm getting a free pawn. I'm going to capture that pawn. And then white moves the king's pawn after that. Now, this is where it gets interesting because black has only moved this pawn and white has lost a pawn, but look at this. White has all of can move the queen, can move this bishop, and can even move this bishop on the next turn. But right now it's black's turn. So what is black going to do? Well, black could do anything. Let's just say, for the sake of example, black decides, hey, let's move the knight out. And then white comes here and takes this pawn. So now it's an even trade. Both sides have lost a pawn, but white has a better position because the bishops have complete free range of motion. White has both these pawns out in the center, and white's bishop is attacking black's weak square, the F7 square it's called, where it's too easy to set up checkmates. For example, let's suppose that you're playing against a player who doesn't see it happening, and they just decide, hey, I'm gonna go here. Then white goes here, and then black decides, hey, I'm gonna, yeah, let's just see here. Let's say, and this here, let's do a good move for black. What if black comes here and forks? Well, yeah, the king has to move, and then black, captures the rook. That's a good move for black, right? Well, yeah, it is a good move for black, but black failed to notice what was coming here. So now we have this little situation here where the bishop can come here, and the king can't escape except by moving out of the way. So so basically we have this situation here. The king has to move out of the way, and then white can come right back here, and there is no way to get out of check because there's no way to get anything in between the king and the queen, and the king can't go back to where it was because the bishop's here. So that's what you want to happen in the queen's gambit. Let me back up. Let me rewind and show you what happened again. That's what's great. So let's repeat these moves because you can repeat the moves here. So this is what happened. Black accepted the queen's gambit. Then white started moving other pieces. Black didn't know what was happening. White brings out the bishop. Black continues its attack with the knight. And then even though black thinks they're winning because they're capturing pieces, white comes with this dangerous attack. And then it's checkmate. That's what you want to happen with the queen's gambit. However, that is not always the exact thing that happens in the queen's gambit. So let's show an example of how something might be different. Let's show how it might turn out instead. Let's say that we do the queen's gambit and things turn out the same way almost, but instead of accepting the queen's gambit, black declines the queen's gambit. That's called the queen's gambit declined. And there's more than one way to decline the gambit. However, this is the official queen's gambit declined. And why does black do this? Well, the reason black does this is really very simple. Because you see, then if white does decide to capture this pawn, well, then black captures that pawn. And then we have a situation where it's about more even. Whereas when black accepts the queen's gambit, it puts white in a better position. Whereas when this happens, instead, black and white are actually pretty close to equal position. However, black may have a slight advantage because notice that black is in a position either one of its bishops can move out here. White still has to think about, moving the moving the king's pawn away of this bishop. Let's be real. Both sides are still very even because there's a lot that can happen here. I mean, white can still proceed with a lot of different plans. And let me just continue this game for the sake of it. I'm playing both sides and making up the moves as I go along. Let's just say this happens, and then white proceeds to do a little bit of development here. Let's say that, black tries to attack the queen. Well, let's suppose that, white instead decides to put the king in check. The king has to get out of check. So then, maybe the king will move, just as an example. And then, anything could happen. Now that the queen's out of the way, we'll start attacking this bishop. The bishop has to go somewhere. The bishop doesn't know where to go, and we just start chasing the bishop. And then, before you know it, white still has an advantage. Now, it's not always going to go like that. This is just one example of how it might go. You know what I'm saying? Because depending on how smart your opponent is, they could still beat you. But I'm just saying the game goes very differently. But there's still one more example to show. There's more than one standard way to decline the Queen's Gambit. Let's start the Queen's Gambit again. Let's start with these moves. And remember, the Queen's Gambit declined is where, black moves this pawn to defend this pawn. But what if instead they move this? And then we have the Slav defense. See, originally considered a less orthodox defense of the Queen's Gambit, this opening has stood as an entire opening system in its own right for decades. So basically, this is different. It's a little bit different. The idea is the same. However, there's one key difference. When this happens, if white does decide to take this pawn, then black captures that. And look at this. Notice how it's equal. It's mirrored. So both sides have lost a pawn, and both have no pawns directly in front of the queen and the bishop on the queen side of the board. This is much more symmetrical. This is much more pleasing to the eye. And all kinds of bizarre things can happen. And of course, as always, white can continue with this, whatever plans they might have, So it's really hard to say what would happen here. And for example, white may decide to pin this knight if the knight comes out here. White can't move this knight because it would put the king in check. So what happens, It chases the bishop, but the bishop doesn't care, kills the knight anyway. But that's just the thing. Anything could happen here. But the point is, the results of the game really depend on all of the moves that someone makes. But what I am saying is that precisely which move you make. So if you reach the Queen's Gambit position, oh, I love this image here. See how this shows? Because it has a history of the different things I've done since I entered the analysis board. So there's three things. See, what happens about the Queen's Gambit is that it forces black to make a choice of how to respond. And they could respond by taking this pawn with their pawn, or they could choose to defend this pawn because it's also being attacked. They can defend it with this pawn or this pawn. Now, I'll be honest, black doesn't have to do any of those choices. They could just completely choose to ignore this, move out a knight, or move out this bishop, or even just, move something else. Like, let's say that they just decide to move something else entirely. What I'm telling you is black can choose any way to respond, but what I am telling you is that there are three main ways that black usually responds. And it's usually either with this pawn, or this pawn. Now, the fact is, the Queen's Gambit is a great opening. It's a great opening because it really gets the game started quickly. Because it's a memorized opening that a lot of people know how to respond to the Queen's Gambit from the black side. A lot of people know how to start the Queen's Gambit from the white side because it's so easy. It only takes two moves. But the Queen's Gambit, Gambit actually means sacrifice. It doesn't mean gamble. However, it is also a bit of a gamble, and it sounds like gamble. And the reason it's a gamble is precisely because when you do the Queen's Gambit, you really don't know what your opponent's going to do. You're hoping that they accept the Queen's Gambit, but they could just as easily decline it. So you're taking a risk when you play the Queen's Gambit. So while the Queen's Gambit can really help you win as white when things go your way, it could also be a way to lose if you don't know what you're doing. Because depending on black's responses, you have to know the theory behind it. You have to know, well, if black does this, then how do I respond? So you really have to be a high-level chess player to have a good success with the Queen's Gambit. The Queen's Gambit is extremely fun to play, but it's also a little bit risky. Now, I said at the beginning that I was going to share my two favorite openings, and that's exactly what I intend to do. The Queen's Gambit is probably my favorite opening because it's just so interesting. It's so simple, you know? However, in my recent chess games, I've been trying a new opening. And what I'm going to show you is not so much a set order of moves, whereas the Queen's Gambit and its different variations are a set order of moves. Instead, we're going to reset the board so all the data is blank, and I'm going to be showing you the next favorite opening, the one that I've been using recently as I try to improve at it. It's called the London system, and here's how it goes. We still do the queen's pawn. Both sides move the queen's pawn, but instead, here's what we do. White tries to get this bishop out here. And notice how it says the London system? Yeah. The London system, there's entire articles and books written about the London system. I even bought a book about the London and Colley system, actually. Now, the London system is not necessarily a set order of moves, and there's different orders you can play these moves in. For example, you may decide to do this knight here instead. You know, you could totally do this, you could do that, and then let's say, black starts moving things, and you could always move this bishop out later. I just like to have black move out its knights just because that's something that commonly happens. So you're going to be moving your pieces, but they don't have to be in any particular order with the London system. It's just traditional for the bishop to go out, second. So let me rewind. Let's just go both do queen's pawn, and then we have the London system. This is just kind of one way of starting it. And then as things progress, so now that this bishop, the reason this bishop comes out is because white's plan is to build a pyramid of pawns. And if this pawn moves here, that would trap the bishop inside the pyramid. And we don't want that. That's why we move this bishop out first. And you may wonder, well, what is this bishop going to do here? What is this bishop going to do? I mean, it's kind of along this diagonal. What's the point of this? You may seriously wonder, well, what does this accomplish? Well, it depends on what your opponent does. That's always the answer to these kinds of things. So let's say black proceeds to start bringing out its knights, and then white continues trying to build this pyramid of pawns. Now, it's actually quite easy to do. Now, what you'll see here is that it's very difficult for black to plan an attack against white. Why is it difficult? Well, think about it. This pawn is defended by both of these pawns. Each of these pawns are defended by a pawn behind them, and each of these pawns are defended by, well, this is not defended by anything, to be honest, but this pawn is defended by the king. So white has built up this defense, and black, in this case, just kind of has the knights trying to start an attack, but where can black attack? It doesn't really have a good place to attack. You see what I'm saying? Because, I mean, look at this. For example, black may decide to come down here and attack the queen with the bishop. Well, white has a number of responses. For example, black could block this with the bishop. There's no reason they can't, and then, they could trade bishops. And then here's what's so freaky about it. White has all of these options. It could capture with the queen, the king, or the knight. I mean, it could do anything. That's the beauty of this. So let's say white chooses to recapture with the knight. Well, then, black still has to figure out what they're doing, and they're kind of blocked in. They don't really have a good plan. This is an average player just starts moving pieces and they don't really know what it is they're trying to do. They might try to do something like, well, white can bring out the king's pawn. What? Hey, we can capture with this pawn, and they can't do anything because if they capture with this knight, well, then the bishop captures them. That's the thing about it, is that the London system isn't so much a set move order as it's a flexible system. It's a very flexible system. But let me show you what happens when the London system goes the way that you want it to. Now, I want to mention, I learned this from Levy, the chess teacher. Levy Rosman, also known as Gotham Chess on all the social media. The London system is actually really cool, and here's what we're going for in the London system. I'm going to show you the double London. Actually, let me just reset the analysis board. I'm going to show you the double London. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to show what happens when both sides make mirrored moves. So the idea here is that both sides are trying to do the same thing. They are building a pyramid of pawns. That's what they're doing. And then they're both trying to get good position. There's a very specific setup. The London system here is great because there is a very specific way. This is flexible. You don't have to do this. However, this is kind of the thing that it's fun to do this. This is really fun to do. And let me show you. This is what it looks like when the setup is complete. Now, what do we have going on here? What is happening here? This position is very interesting. Why is this position so interesting? Well, it's precisely because if you look at this, all of the pieces are in good position. They're all in a good position here. And think about this. The bishops, they can choose to trade off. Anything could happen. But see, let's take white's bishop. It has the full range of motion. It has this diagonal and this diagonal. It's close to the center of the board. We have our pyramid of pawns. We have great defense. The knights defend each other. And the king has the option to castle on this side. And as soon as the queen moves somewhere else, well, then it also has the option to castle here. So the idea is that every piece is defended. Well, actually not quite, because let's be honest, this bishop is not defended. It's not. And so you need to be careful not to necessarily do this, and then also put your knight in the way at the same time. You still have to be careful with this, just because of the fact that, the queen is the main thing that defends the bishop. And you're not always going to get up this exact setup, because depending on what your opponent does, it may actually make more sense to, like I showed earlier, bring the bishop over all the way here and pin the knight if the knight is there. So there's a lot of different things that could happen, but this is just the basic setup. I'm just showing you what the pieces look like once someone has built their pyramid and have the knights defending each other. So this is kind of like the double London, and it looks extremely cool. So you may wonder, well, what is this London system all about? Why is the London system, a good system? Well, here's the thing: is the reason the London system is good is because what you're not supposed to make these specific moves in a specific order. The reason the London system is good is because it's a flexible system. So the idea behind this is that ideally you need to see what your opponent is doing and see which of these moves, because this setup is good, but which of these moves do you want to do? Or do you want to do something else entirely and break this system as soon as your opponent does something that messes it up? But basically, you're going to want to build the pyramid of pawns if you have the chance, and you'll want the knights to defend each other if you have the chance. And I would like to mention something. You may wonder, well, what was it that got me using the London system? Well, what got me using it is I was using the Queen's Gambit, but then I was playing Crazy House chess one night, and Crazy House chess is different because all the rules of chess apply, except that captured pieces, when you capture your opponent's pieces, you can put them on your side, and they become one of your pieces that you can drop back on the board. And the Queen's Gambit doesn't work the same way in Crazy House chess. And why is that? That's because when you give Black that extra pawn and they accept the gambit, well, then they have an extra pawn they can use against you. So all of a sudden, White has a huge disadvantage. And so I decided, well, when I play Crazy House chess, I need to use the London system because the London system is not a gambit. It doesn't involve a sacrifice. So if the London system is played well, then your goal is not to lose pieces unless you can get more of your opponent's pieces than what you're losing. So the London system is actually better in Crazy House chess. But if it worked in Crazy House chess, then it'll work in standard chess too, right? Well, why don't we test the theory? Since I am live streaming, since this is one of my live streams that I do on Twitch, and I am trying to teach how things actually work, well, there's only one proper way to test it, and that is to actually play a game against other people and see if I can win. Now, keep in mind, I could lose because my opponents could know what they're doing more than I do. But when teaching chess, winning and losing are both opportunities for learning. That's the point. I'll learn something, and if you're watching this, you'll learn something. That's kind of the idea. Also, a little bit of a note. Notice that with the exception of certain highlights, have you noticed that most things are grayscale? Notice that my camera is grayscale. The board is mostly grayscale. And that's because I'm trying to make this accessible to people with color blindness. That's what I'm trying to do. And so I customized the theme a little bit on livechess.org. By the way, livechess.org is a fabulous chess playing site. It's an alternative to chess.com if you don't feel like spending money because everything is free. But as you see, there's an analysis board. And there's something else I want to show you. I'm going to show you something else really cool before I start playing some chess. I'm going to show you if you go to Tools and go to Openings, look at this list of openings. You see this list of openings here? There is every possible opening you can imagine. And you can search the openings. For example, let's look up London. So, okay, I mistyped it. So there's London system. There's all these different variations of the London system. There's London system poisoned pawn. What is the London system poisoned pawn variation? I have never heard this before. Let's just look at this. Let's see how this goes. Let's see here. Okay, let's see. Let's go back to the very beginning and see what the poison pawn variation looks like. Ooh, that's strange. It looks like a reversed Queen's Gambit thing, except, yeah, what is this? Yeah, they don't have a description of this opening. I'm just curious what this is about. I don't know what this is about, but they call it the poison pawn variation. And everybody likes to come up with their own, openings. People like to come up with their own openings. They like to come up with names for them. New chess openings are going to keep being invented, just like Tetris openings are going to keep getting invented. So that's just a fact. But anyway, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to play a game here. I'm going to go to the lobby, and actually, here's what I need to do. If I want to teach the Queen's Gambit or the London system, I need to be playing as white. Let me see if I can create a game specifically where I'm playing as white. Wait a minute. No, I didn't mean to do that. I was trying to... Okay, I want to create a real-time game. We're going to keep this short. Let's make there be 10 minutes per side. That's what we're going to do. It's going to be standard, but I'm going to be playing as white. That's the goal. I'm going to see if I can have a game where I'm playing as so I can teach the London system. Okay, here we go. Game started. I'm playing as white. It's time to see. Wait a minute. Why am I in a correspondence game? I am so confused. Wait a minute. I'm trying to figure out what is happening here. I'm trying to do. Yeah, I don't know why it took me to a correspondence game. That's weird. Okay, okay, now it's starting. Okay, maybe this is the real game. Okay, awesome. Now we're in the real game. We're in a rapid game. We have a bunny symbol. That's how we know it's rapid, because bunnies are fast. But will my opponent make a move? We don't know what they're going to do. See, here we go. They also did Queen's Pawn. It's time to do our accelerated London system. We got the Queen's Pawn out, we got the Bishop out, and let's just start building the development. I got my pyramid of pawns going. What is my opponent doing? We don't know. But one of the benefits of this London system, you see, is that I'm trying to go for a certain setup. Therefore, I don't have to think much about my initial moves. Okay, so let's see here what we got. Just going to build up this system here. Okay, I already have the full setup here. You see, my opponent's board is a mess, but I have this full setup here. So what's happening now? I don't know what's happening. Let's see what's going to happen here now. I don't know if I want to castle yet or not. But the king decided to castle, so what I'm actually going to do here is I'm actually going to try something a little bit unique here. All right, this is most interesting. So let's see what we can do here. I'm going to move the knight right here, and the opponent will probably capture my knight with theirs. That's what I'm hoping they do. Let's see. See, it depends on my opponent. And if I lose this game, I'm going to be so embarrassed because I'm trying to teach you the flexibility of the London system and what it allows you to do. They did not capture my knight. Honestly, I'm a little bit surprised. Hey, they may decide to capture it later. There's no telling that they won't. So let's try something. I'm going to castle my king over on this side, because the king has the option to castle on either side. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to connect these two rooks here. The idea is these two rooks will protect each other. Oh, okay. They're doing something funky there. If they decide to capture that pawn, I'm fine with that, really. I'm not using it for anything. And I can always capture back with one of my other pawns. I'm going to start by trying to bring out some pieces. Okay, here we go. They finally captured my knight with theirs. And now I'm going to force this knight to move. I'm going to force this knight to move. I don't really know what's going to happen here, but it's going to be funny regardless of what happens. Because this knight is going to be forced to move, and we don't have a clue. It could end up moving anywhere, and we just don't know where it's going to go. This is a lot of fun. I love chess. And see, my opponent has to take time to think. And if my opponent takes too long to think, they'll lose the game on time. What's great about online chess is when you choose your time control, you can choose how long the game will go. And if each side has a clock of 10 minutes, then the game can't go longer than 20 minutes total. So here's what I'm going to do now. Now what I'm going to do is I need to figure out something here. I see. This knight is planning to go here and fork these rooks. Well, I'm not going to allow it to do that because we're going to defend this. Yeah, we're going to defend. Wait, I could do that. Yeah, let's defend this pawn with this rook. So the knight can't go here and try to fork the two rooks. One of them has moved, and this pawn is defended. Because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get rid of this knight. If this knight runs out of places to go when it's attacked, I could destroy my opponent's knight, and then I'll have a clear advantage because I'll have more pieces. Okay, so there we go. Now let's attack this knight here. Where's the knight gonna go? Oh, I know where it's gonna go. The knight is probably gonna come capture this pawn here. That's probably what it's gonna do. Of course, I can still capture it, but then my bishop also gets captured. So I mean, it's not the worst thing in the world, but hey, it is what it is, you know. Regardless, I'll probably still win this game because I have this plan. Oh, they decide to go right back there, and then I can capture their knight. My opponent blundered. My opponent made a huge mistake right there. I have the advantage now. I'm just waiting for my opponent to continue. Oh, okay. I will capture that. This person clearly does not know what they're doing here. I just took the queen with the pawn. How embarrassing for them. All right. See, this bishop is protected by my queen here. So this is interesting. Now I no longer have that one bishop, but I have a lot more pieces here. So now I'm going to start moving these pawns out. I'm going to be moving more pawns out here. And oh, I see how this is. Oh, look what they did there. See what they did? Now they're trying to capture this bishop by blocking my queen from protecting it. Well, no big deal. I will simply take that pawn. The pawn will capture my bishop, and then even though I've lost a bishop, I have captured two pawns, and with being already a few pieces ahead, I have the clear advantage now. What will they do? At this point, I have the advantage. I highly doubt they can beat me now. This is awesome. See, the thing with live chess and the thing with live streams is this is happening right now. If you're watching this now, this is not edited. This is just really what happens. So if I win my first ever official game while doing the stream to demonstrate, my wins with my flexible London system, although with my opponent making blunders like this, I can't really give my opening much credit because it's really their mistakes that allow me to win this game. But whatever, it is what it is, if you know what I'm saying. Let's see here. Now this pawn attacks that pawn. There are no good moves from my opponent right now. Not with all this happening. Because this pawn, what's it going to do? Yeah, there's really nothing that it can do right here, right now. There's not much. So now I just have to do is wait for my opponent to make their move so I can checkmate them. Oh, that's what's fun about this. I could have chosen a shorter time control, but I don't play well when I don't have much time to think. I like to start with at least 10 minutes on my clock because I'm not good at blitz. I'm just not. I don't think that fast. So now I put the king in check with that rook. Okay, and then I put the king in check with the rook here because my queen is defended by the rook. And then I put the king in check again right here with this pawn. And then where's the king going to go? Okay, yes, the king can go there, but then there's still a lot more pieces that can move. So let's go here. Let's attack this pawn. Oh, interesting. Now my knight is free to go here and put the king in check. Now where's the king going to go? The king is losing bad. I'm going to destroy this king. My opponent resigned. They wouldn't even let me finish checkmating them because they saw what was happening. Okay, they resign. Actually, is there a way to continue the game with artificial intelligence? Let me go to the analysis board of this game. I just want to see, is there a way to continue from here? Play the computer. Yes. Let's play the computer from this position. And okay, Fairy Stockfish 14 level 1. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to play the white side from the highest strength. Yeah, level 8. Let's see, with this position, can the computer beat me? Probably not. Even with the best moves, I have the advantage here. So look here. Now my queen captures the bishop, putting the king in check. And then my knight here can go right here and put the king in check again. And then my queen comes here, captures the rook, and then here we go. The rook over here puts the king in check again. Okay, that's fun. And then my queen captures this rook over here. And yes, the king can take the knight. But at this point, it doesn't even matter. Not really. Because here, I put the king in check again. Okay. We're going to start advancing this pawn, get another queen. All right, we got 2 queens now. And that pawn I'll capture with my king. My opponent can't do anything here. That's what's great about this. Yeah. Yep. Here we go. Put the king in check. All right. Capture this bishop right here. Yeah, that's totally fine. Okay, put the king in check there. Checkmate. See, black was in such a bad position there that even though I played against the computer could not win because I had more pieces at that point. You see what I'm saying? So that's kind of the idea.